Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Natsu Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 9, Episode 4 of The Flash. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, Marcus finished the Red Death's cosmic treadmill, and now they just need the final piece to all of this, and it turns out that final piece of this puzzle is Barry. This episode had a lot of really interesting developments and reveals, because especially the way like Red Death kept talking about villains and stuff like that, like there was such disgust in her voice with villains. I was like, oh, so you're going like super hardcore vigilante where you're just like, that's why I was like, what's your beef with Barry then? It's like, especially when she found out that Barry was working with criminals, she's like, there is no reformed criminal. I'm like, oh, you're a hardcore, like, yeah, Batman probably had like, I'm sure like even more so in probably the comics. Obviously, we probably saw that a little bit more for like Ben Affleck's Batman, where it's like you're a hardened Batman that goes super hard against criminals, but not to the point you want to kill them. But it seems like she's in that vein of just like, I even love it. It's like, yo, I am vengeance. I am the night. I'm Red Death. And I was like, yeah. But it's like, I mean, once again, you can probably make comparisons to like, especially once again, the suit and everything it does. I made comparisons to obviously like Luke's Batwing suit, but it also kind of reminds me of, I don't know if I made that comparison of like Jason Todd as Red Hood. I mean, especially the mentality of it as well. Like, you know, I think Jason Todd was leaning more that vengeance side of things. I mean, obviously it lends itself to like the whole conversation about like, oh yeah, Batman keeps locking up these supervillains that kill multiple people at a time. Barry's kind of in that same vein, but it's the typical superhero thing, but that back and forth of just kind of like, right, you lock criminals up, but it's like, no, the peacemaker conversation of like, yeah, Batman leaves villains alive. I put them in their graves. I have why I have no villains? Because they're all in the grave right now. So they're when I knock them down, they don't get back up. I mean, it's the age-old back and forth, because even like, season 2 of Daredevil, Punisher, and, Frank versus Matt, like that conversation there too. So I think that was so fascinating. It's like I said, you could taste the venom in her mouth, like in her voice when she talks about villains and criminals. It's like, oh, you're like super hardcore. Like, nah, criminals need to die. Like they do more harm than good. And especially like when she had Barry captured, and it's like, oh, I'm after your lightning rod. And it's like, because Barry thought this was all about the negative speed force, but she's like, oh, you're stupid. You think that's what this is? That I need some stupid negative speed force? Takes off the helmet, because she's talking to, like, she showed, like, I'm jumping all over the place because I got so excited. I was like, because the moment she was talking to like Iris as Ryan, I was like, wait. I was like, wait, you're still over there talking to Barry. I was like, how did you do that? I was like, did you make like a little, like, how Barry kind of makes like time copies of himself? I was like, did you do the same thing? It's like a time copy talking to Barry or Iris. It turns out the suit is empty because the suit is automated. That's where all the speed and all the power is. It's in the suit, because her power doesn't come from a speed force. It comes from an artificial speed force. And it seems like it's specifically tied to the suit. But it might also just be the reason why she doesn't, because she didn't use her super speed outside of the suit. So it's probably a thing of either the super speed is allocated specifically to the suit, so she doesn't have it outside of it, or she does, but she doesn't use it because because her powers come from an artificial speed force, because she's not a natural speedster, that maybe it will make her kind of like she'd end up kind of going down the trajectory route and just kind of burning herself out of existence, because her body's not meant to handle that, because she's not a traditional, like, true speedster in that regard. She's a pseudo speedster. I'm curious, like, I feel like it's more so the former, that it's just like, no, it's all the speed force is tied to the suit specifically. But like I said, that cool moment where she took the helmet off and the suit was there, I was like, what? I was like, there was nothing there. I was like, wait, what? And then Barry's like, yeah, the suit's automatic. So while she's talking to Iris, she's having that whole conversation with Barry. It's like she's having that telepathic. I'm like, yo, that's some top class villainy there. That's pretty dope, being like, oh yeah, I'm like over here playing Iris while I'm also talking to Barry. I was like, that's so interesting. And I love that because Iris and her kept talking and she's like, oh, you want some creamer? I was like, that's weird. She knows exactly where things are in this house. I was like, maybe I'll put that aside because Iris didn't say anything. And then she messed up when Iris was like, yeah, the Royal Flush Gang killed your mom. She's like, yeah. I was like, got her, Iris. You got her. I was waiting because Iris was slowly picking up on stuff. It's like, yeah, there's something definitely going on here. Because also her story was inconsistent. She was like, Team Bat would have told them if they had found Ryan, because Ryan's like, yeah, I got attacked by the Reds, but there's they said she's been gone for weeks, so it's like all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I was out on patrol. Like they said, maybe I misremember, but I could have sworn they said Ryan's been missing for weeks. Maybe they just said days, but I could have sworn last episode they said weeks. So there was inconsistencies in her story, which does beg the question if we find out she's from a different timeline. So where's the Ryan from this timeline? Did she do something to her to hide away? It's like, right, makes it easier to parade her around as Ryan when there's not the other Ryan hanging around. I mean, she's been sitting on this for a hot minute if the other Ryan's been missing for weeks or whatever. But she tells Iris okay, I'm from a different timeline. Because it's like, right, the Ryan of this timeline, her mom was killed by the Wonderland gang, Alice's gang. That's the reason why. Because it's like, obviously she's had to work with villains and stuff like that too. But obviously even Alice, and they were in a slightly better spot by the end. But even then, it wasn't great. Obviously, they still had their beef, and so. Her point of view of there's no such thing as a reformed villain. It's like, well, you kind of would have that perspective. Also interesting considering even if we didn't get to continue Batwoman, we knew at least where the story ended with you and your brother, but maybe the argument was there was no reforming him or whatever. But either way, it's because she's from a different timeline. She was freestyling it based on stuff because her life is completely different from this world's Ryan's life. And it's like, okay, who are you? I'm from an alternate timeline. Now, immediately I was like, wait, was I right? Because my theory was could she be from the Armageddon timeline? Because her and, obviously she was part of the team of heroes when Eobard was the Flash and stuff. But then she's like, oh, I'm from the timeline with the Flash is the world's greatest villain. I was like, wait, what? I was like, well, because Eobard was the Flash in that time. It's because she's not from the Armageddon timeline. She's from a completely different timeline. One where she was raised by the Waynes. You're interesting. She was like, there is no Batman because they never had Bruce. It's interesting too because if you don't know, spoilers for Pennyworth, sadly it's canceled, so we'll never get a resolution on this in that timeline anyway. But in that world, Thomas and Martha had a daughter. Now, they eventually down the road could have had a son. Something happened. They might have lost their daughter. But the fact of the matter is, you never know how they could have spun that because maybe in that world it is a Batwoman instead of a Batman, just like in this world. I mean, this timeline that Ryan's from. Just once again, it's using Arrow, for example, Mia becoming the new Green Arrow. Whereas, in the comics, it's his son, Connor, but in the show, he had a son, William, but Mia's the one that ended up becoming the Green Arrow. So, that's the example I used when I was kind of discussing that point. But regardless, it's almost an interesting parallel in that regard. But yeah, she grew up, back when her parents died, she became Gotham's guardian. And when she did, there was the whole locking up villains things, but they got out time and time again, and she just got tired of it. And so she borrowed from other heroes. Specifically, she analyzed Barry and made an artificial Speed Force and a suit and became a hero. And now she's saying that basically because the Flash was jealous of her, yada, 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 she ended up saying right, me and Barry kind of went to war. He gathered up his rogues. I had my squad and we went to war. And basically she had to hide in the Speed Force or whatever, but because she's not an organic speedster, it spit her out and she landed in this world. Now, we don't know if that's 100% true or not, that part, but Iris saw through the BS because she's like, wait, why would you need me? Because you were like, okay, you want to take me to your world so that I could talk that Barry down. What about the Iris of that world? It's like, well, it's the way she was talking, I was like, she's dead, isn't she? And it's like, yes. And that she's the one that killed her. I wonder, was it actually an accident or did she do it on purpose because she got consumed by rage? It might have been a thing of her rage consumed her and she did try to go after Barry but ended up killing Iris in the process. So no wonder Barry's got all the smoke and beef with you because it's you ended up killing the woman he loves. It's yeah, you guys were best friends, but she was consumed by vengeance. She was consumed about, it's just, like I said, she went on that extreme vigilante lane of like, I gotta wipe out all the villains. I need to kill them so they stay down for good. Because she's talking very Minority Report thing, because now she has this power. She's like, I can lock up villains faster than they can even think about. She didn't fully say kill, but it feels like it's heavily implied. Like, if she hasn't gone down that route, she will. But she's on, like I said, on some Minority Report stuff of, I can lock a villain up before they can even think about committing a crime. And you're like, yeah, that's a very authoritative, totalitarian type of approach, very turning Gotham into a police state. Now, I get it. Gotham is the most crime-riddled place, and I would make the argument in all of fiction, probably, like, if you compare fiction and even reality, is the most crime-ridden place ever. I get it, but like locking up people before they actually even technically do anything, it's like, yeah, that's breaking some civil liberties and stuff like that. But that's kind of beside the point in her mind. But yeah, that's why she needs Barry, because the cosmic treadmill can only work for organic speed, and so she needs Barry to be the fuel for her treadmill, and she needs Iris to bait him into doing it, but she's also going to use her as bait for the other Barry. When she goes back to her world, she's going to drag Iris with her and use her as bait against that other Barry. And I love that it's just like, once again, Iris saw through her. She's like, all right, you want to play like that? All right, bet, I got this. And puts on a suit, which actually is pretty dope, seeing the suit kind of form. I'm like, yo, very Iron Man-esque. I actually thought that was pretty dope. I'm so glad Javicia gets to like do that. That's actually pretty dope, being able, because obviously like she got to play a very complex character with Ryan, with everything that she was dealing with, and taking up the mantle from someone else. And now it's a situation of, you get to play this alternate version of your character of like, oh yeah, I get to be the bad guy and I get to be a speedster too. That's pretty sick. So I think that's pretty dope. Isn't she also on another show right now? It's a show my mom watches. Is it Family Business? I don't know if she was... I think that's still going on. And I don't know if she's still in the show or not. But once again, my mom loves that show, and I've seen her in it from time to time. Every time I say, Javicia Leslie, that's awesome. Either way, all the while this is happening, Barry is trying to talk to Mark, because Mark thinks like, no, it's over. He's like, I betrayed you and stuff like that. It's like, dude, you wouldn't be the first bad guy that Barry's like a guy that's made some mistakes. He's like, yeah, before me and Frost were tight, she tried to kill me, but look where we ended up. Barry's actually like reformed quite a few of his villains. I mean, Rory's in a complicated spot, Heatwave, but it's like, yeah, they're, and obviously him and Snart became good pals. Like, Snart became someone that he could trust and work with. So, I mean, plus he's also met with like an alternate. Well, there's also the alternate. There's a Snart from, what was it? Earth X. The one, that's, I think they never married, or were they engaged? Him and, was it the Ray? So yeah. But Barry's always had an interesting relationship with some of his villains. I mean, you look at his rogue squad right now, it's like, yeah, you're not too, don't think like you're ever fully lost. Like, the fact is, there's always an opportunity. It's never too late for a second chance. I mean, Barry has like gotten to the point that he has talked down quite a few of his villains, or at least tried to talk Savitar down. That didn't work. It's kind of a trick, but also he did try, and that didn't work out. So, that's another comparison too. I think I made the comparison to the whole Savitar thing too, just because that's the only other speedster like wearing like super bulky armor in that same Iron Man-esque vein. But Mark thought like, no, like there's no going back for me. Like, I'm not part of the team. It's like, yes, you are. And it's like, yeah, how do you know that when this is all said and done that this speedster won't just kill you at the end? It's like, yeah, but if she does, I die. At least I'll be reunited with Frost like that. But when the time comes, Ryan shows up with Iris, and it's like, yeah, you, Barry, either you run, like, yes, I need her, but that doesn't mean you can't be scarred up if need be and electrocuted. And it's like, right, Barry runs using the cosmic treadmill, and Mark ends up helping him, because it's like, right, it's never too late for a second chance, and he wanted to do the right thing this time. And luckily, because of that, and Mark started handling himself pretty well against all of the villains. He was like, no, like, They're calling him a Ken doll and stuff like that, but he fought against him. Luckily, the squad showed up when they did, but Barry wasn't in a position to help because his speed was, negated at the time. And with all those villains and her getting back up, regaining her speed, there was no time, so they bailed with Barry. But for Barry, he felt so bad. He's like, I'm the one that convinced Mark to do the right thing, and we ended up leaving him behind. It's like, we've already lost too many people on this team, even more recently with Frost, now Caitlin. It's like, we've lost too much already, and I wasn't, especially when Mark did the right thing. And now it's like, did he die, or did he maybe, because we didn't see at the end whether or not he could be dead, but I doubt he is. Maybe they want to keep him and use him as bait to draw the flashback in. But the rest of this rogue squad, it's like, yo, there's nothing we could do. But for Barry, it's like, we don't leave people behind. And this rogue squad is like, who cares? He betrayed us and stuff like that. But even Keon is like, everyone's lives matter. Even if he wanted to take my life to bring back hers, it's like, we shouldn't substitute. No life is more valuable than any. We're all connected. We're all part of the same whole. We're all a piece of this great grand experience that is life. And no life is less valuable than another. And no life is more valuable than another. So... And Barry's just like, we can't lose anyone else. So, and now it's like, yeah, Ryan had every reason to hate the other universes, her timeline's Barry, but she hates you just as much because you took her chance from going home. Makes you wonder what the state of her timeline is like now. That also answers a question I had previously too of what happens to time? Don't timelines disappear? It's like, yeah, I guess once timelines branch off into new directions, those timelines still exist somewhere in the ether. So her timeline still is out there. But it's probably be a lot more. It's just a matter of finding the exact timeline you need to go to. I guess it's kind of like a focus and willpower and memory of focusing on your particular timeline you're trying to get to. So I guess every timeline that's ever been in existence in the Flash exists. You just have to be able to get to it, But obviously there's been so many branches because of the entirety of this show. But yeah, Ryan's decided, well, if I can't go home, if he take my world from me, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to destroy I'm going to take everything from him. I'm going to make this world my own. So once again, where's the real Ryan? She's got to be hidden somewhere. We catch up a little bit with the Chalegra thing, which I love that Chester was talking to what was it, Wookiee Lover 77 about it. And it's like, oh, so what's up with you and Chalegra? It's like, yeah, we're not really talking. It's like, don't worry about it. You guys are going to get in sync at some point in time. Which at the end, Allegra's like, no, we should talk about it. It's like, this was a reminder of life can be so short. So she's like, I'm ready to have that conversation. But Chester's like, with everything going on, this doesn't seem like the right time. Which Allegra's like, right, I'm stupid for this. He was like, no, this is what I want. But the fact of the matter is, once we've taken care of Red Death, that's when we can really focus on figuring out whatever this is, And then also, there's a whole thing with Cecile and Joe. Back to that conversation of wanting to move. He's already checking out a place that's on the market, but it won't be on the market for long. And Cecile's kind of upset. Has every right to be. He's like, you're doing this without me. What about how much this is going to impact me? I have a firm here. The fact of the matter, I have a practice here. What do you it'd be a 2-hour commute from there to where here is. And it's like, I get you don't want me on the battlefield, but she's trying to fully understand what's really gotten Joe so shook up about all of this. It's like, especially now after everything, it's because it makes him kind of reflect on Iris and Wally. Because it's like, I don't want Jenna to grow up like they did, because neither one of them had a normal childhood. Wally spent 20 years of his life thinking I walked out on him. Iris had to watch every day as I went to work and I might not come back. It's like, I don't want that for Jenna. I want her to have a semi-normal life. It's like, truth be told, is no one in the DC universe, you're not going to have a normal life. You live in a DC universe. There's no escaping the wildness, but at the very least, you can go to places where there's less likely to be in the heat, in the eye of the storm that is Central City, so that's understandable. I mean, especially when later on, the storm outside caused the glasses shatter, and Tom, I was like, oh boy, and Tom kind of seemed like it was slowing down, but it was like, no, it was Cecile using her telekinesis to stop the glass. and she went out to help other people, but it made her realize, like, wow, you might be right, Joe. Like, that storm, if it had been up a little higher, it would hit directly, and that lightning would have hit directly into Jenna's room. But for, Jenna's proud of her mom because she's like, oh my God, my mom's a superhero. And Joe's like, yeah, she is, and she's not quitting anytime soon, because it's like, right, we can do what we can to have Jenna have a normal life, but you are a superhero, and I shouldn't try and take that away from you. So they're going to stay in Central City for now and be able to kind of figure that out, because Cecile is an inspiration. She's a symbol to her daughter that, hey, you can be anything that you want. And I want her to be able to see that. And how can I kind of take that away from my daughter, but also take that away from you? So I think it's still going to be there in the back of both of their minds going forward. But the subject's kind of been nixed for now. But I think it is going to be a subject we are going to circle back to eventually. So either way, this obviously this was a two-parter, so I don't know if everything's even going to get resolved next episode. Most likely not. This is going to be probably the overarching arc. Not unless we're doing a little bit of a thing where every season is, every couple episodes is kind of like a new arc type of thing. Once again, I think this season's only 13 episodes, so that might not be the case. Wasn't one of the seasons like that, or am I thinking about a different show? I know Black Lightning did that, like every couple episodes was like, especially in season 2 did that, where like every couple episodes was a kind of almost isolated arc. But I want to say this show did that as well, or am I thinking of a different DC show? There was some show that had like every couple episodes was like a little mini arc. It might have been this, but I don't remember off the top of my head now. So I'm curious to see how the season ends up playing out. I mean, especially because next episode is episode 5, so it kind of almost parallels with like Armageddon being the 5 part of it was. So it almost parallels with that. But I don't know if this is going to be like resolved next episode or not. It's probably going to be a maybe continuous thing over the course of the season. I don't know. I'd be so interested to see. I'm also curious to see, is there going to be any stuff from like that alternate timeline where we get an alternate Barry coming into the timeline, into this timeline, which would be interesting considering we got the trailer from like the Flash movie, and obviously we got 2 Barrys in that. So it wouldn't be the first time we've gotten multiple Barrys, but still, it's just the timing of bringing that story element in just around the time we know that there's going to, that whole thing's going to play out in to some extent in the Flash movie. So that's interesting. But I'd also, because I know there's some talks about like, oh yeah, there's some other returning characters. I'm like, could they not be like because I was like, how do you work around the whole certain things? And I'm like, well, if they're from an alternate timeline, you could work around that easily. So I'm like, is that where we get some of those other character appearances from? I'd be interested to find out. So I'm very, very excited to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.